episode of Let's Talk Deer, brought to you by Grandpa Ray Outdoors, owned by Mr. John O'Brien. John's a Midwestern guy. He's around the Madison, Wisconsin area. He's been an agronomist for over 29 years. So he knows seed, he knows soil, and he knows what white-tailed deer need. John has a large seed company, Grandpa Ray Outdoors, but also he's in educating. He's one of the best educator, seminar, platform speaker, communicator for soil, water, and cover. The soil brings the food, the water hydrates, and the cover keeps them safe. So that's what whitetail needs. So any questions at all about seed, go to grandparrayoutdoors.com. Let's Talk Deer does receive compensation from Grandpa Ray Outdoors for mentioning him on my show. Welcome to another episode of Let's Talk Deer, hosted by Bruce Hutchin. And it's just a pleasure to be talking with Kaz, and that's his nickname, or he's known as, but Greg Kazmierski. He's the vice chair of the Natural Resource Board for the state of Wisconsin. Kaz, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me.
Well, I'm excited because you and I talked when we set up the show. There's a lot of what I call misinformation. There was a lot of social media flurry when they saw the survey go out for Wisconsin, surveying anybody who had a license. I live in Colorado, but I hunt a lot in Wisconsin, a lot of different farms. And so I reached out to Dan Smith and I said, what do you think Wisconsin's, where's Wisconsin going? And at the same time, I placed a call to Wisconsin DNR, and I got a hold of Kaz, and Kaz so graciously sent me some information that we're going to talk about extensively, and said he'd be willing to come on the show and chit-chat and try to alleviate some of the question marks or some of the angst or some of the concern and maybe jubilation. I don't know, but what I want to do is just get a good handle from the vice chair's, mouth. Where's Wisconsin going? What do they want to happen with their deer herd, and what should we expect in the future? So, Kaz, how do you want to start off?
Well, I think I need to start with what prompted the board to unanimously consent to put those questions on the spring hearing. Now, first of all, it's a public survey. We're trying to find out where the public is at. We know that the public senses there's something wrong. We also know that the public doesn't have all the facts. But we sat down and put some conceptual ideas together on how we could stop the hemorrhaging of hunting license sales, deer hunting license sales. Because license sales are reflective of the product that we put out there on the landscape from the DNR's perspective, or at least this board's perspective. And we know there's dissatisfaction with the product that's out there. Now, that being said, you can't please everybody all the time. So you have the camp that wouldn't want anybody to shoot a buck unless it was 5 years old, to the guy that doesn't really care whether it's a pork buck or a doe. He just wants meat in his freezer. So, but we have to try and satisfy all those different segments of deer hunters, and then along with the various weapon types that people choose to buy a license for. So we put those questions out to try and get a sense. They are not rules. There's nothing in place yet to shove a rule down people's throat or anything like that. It's exactly what the spring hearings are intended to do, and that's measure the public perception of some of those ideas.
And when does all that information, that data that hopefully thousands of people filled out the survey, when does the public ever see that?
Well, typically it's within 2 days of the vote. But this year, because of the coronavirus, we couldn't hold the in-person county-wide meetings. There was a meeting every year for 85 years, actually, held in every county to weigh in on those issues. But because of the social distancing requirements and that, we elected to just put it out only as a questionnaire on the online survey. So the reason it hasn't come out yet is they're sorting through, because anytime you do anything online, you've got people that multiple vote and people that aren't eligible to vote, voting on the questions, and those questions are really advisory to the board. So we kind of really want to get a handle on what was generated, with the true sportsmen and women that any kind of potential rules would affect, and kind of weed out some of the social media trolling and bombing that goes on. So that's what they're in the process of looking at right now.
Okay, so the public in Wisconsin don't really know, haven't been told what the survey says. Is that correct? Okay.
That's correct.
Okay. So let's just fast forward. You graciously sent me some data, and we're going to go through that, because numbers are numbers, and you have to know where the numbers are coming from and where they're pointing to, because you can look at a stack of numbers and go, well, gee, that doesn't make sense, or that makes a lot of sense. And how does that number support what we're saying here? So I want Kaz just to go through this. And now, if somebody wanted to get a hold of this data, if they say, Bruce, where can I get a hold of it? Where can they get a hold of it, Kaz?
Well, the data that was in the upper portion of the chart that I sent you was in the Crossbow report. The department reported to the board. And we had asked the department to give us an analysis of crossbows, the impacts of crossbows, that type of thing on deer hunting.
So it was a matter of public record. Somebody could find it if they went into the archive, or not the archive, but the DNR. They could go and find the same data we're going to talk about, because people are going to ask me, where'd you get the data? I want to see the data.
Right. Now, that data was submitted in last year, so it doesn't have 2019 updates on it. But when people had questions regarding our board questions, they added the preliminary 2019 data to their chart.
And I see that on the spreadsheet that I have. I see it 2019, and then you had, like you said, you had a hash mark, and then 2019, which is data that you got or you were able to interpolate, or where does that data come from on that spreadsheet?
On the one with the pound sign?
Yeah, under the six-year average, which isn't the 6-year average. I don't mean to confuse people, but the pound sign 2019, 127,814 bow licenses, 100,070 crossbow, and 510 rifle licenses. Okay,
so I requested data from the department on December 1st, after the firearm season was over, the 9-day firearm season, and I requested up-to-date licensed purchase data, and harvest data is readily available on the internet if you go on the Wisconsin DNR website, all you have to do is type in harvest data, and it'll take you right to it. And because we had online registration and phone-in registration now, they were updating that every week throughout the course of the season. So all that data is compiled there where anybody can see it. The license data is a little more obscure. They don't give final license data numbers until the end of March. And that's when the license year runs through. So then it takes a while to get the final preliminary or data that's not preliminary. But I did my research after the 9-day firearm season was over, so that's where the license data is from. And there was probably some changes to it since then.
Okay.
But
so,
not much.
Yeah, so. Thank you for that. So let's just, for the sense of our discussion here, in 2019, based on your information, 24,238 archery licenses were sold, 18.1%, 29,825, 22.2%. So 40% of all the licenses sold in Wisconsin were either crossbow or archery. Is that correct? Am I reading the information right?
That's actually the harvest of bucks.
Oh, that's the harvest date. Okay. Thank you for correcting me.
Right. So.
Okay. Comments? Go ahead.
So, to the left side is the license data.
Okay, in the yellow. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm just a little bit dyslexic here.
Okay. Not a problem.
And then the green, now that's where the 24,238 bucks were killed, 18%, round figures, for archery, 29,825, 22%. So that's 40% of all the deer killed in Wisconsin last year were either with a crossbow or archery.
Correct.
And then gun season amended 80,149 or 59.7%, which is still significantly 20,000 down from the previous year. And crossbows went up about $5,000. And let's see, I don't know how I can interpret how much.
You can't compare against that data that's on the upper portion because they dropped out.
Okay, just
data.
But just the bottom line then for 2000 hashtag 2019. So we don't have the data to go back and say, wait a minute, how much more? But we do know, based on your data, 5,000 more bucks were killed with crossbows than with archery.
Correct. Now, last year's final buck harvest, just for firearm, was 112,443.
Okay, and I don't see that figure.
No, but that's printed in their. Every year they do a big game harvest summary, and they keep adding the previous year onto that summary. That's also available on the DNR website. So and all of the numbers I'm using here are department numbers. These are not something that Kaz pulled out of his hat. These are actual registration, actual license sales, where the top portion of that was not. That was a method that the DNR used to try and establish pure success rates, and then be able to differentiate success rates between archers, crossbows, and gun hunters. So a lot of data was dropped out of that to try and get a pure success rate. Because one of the problems that we have with collecting data is we have a patron's license, for example, that licenses you for all three. Okay.
Okay.
And so it's hard to separate that out. So what the department did with those numbers is drop out the harvest and the license sales figures on that duplicate kind of stuff. So, but I've always said, but the public really wants to see what reality is. How many people bought a crossbow license? How many people bought an archery license? How many people bought a gun license? And then how many were killed with a bow? How many were killed with a crossbow? And how many were killed with a firearm? That's what they want to see. So getting pure numbers on success rates isn't as important than the reality on the ground, because of that 53,000 deer that crossbow hunters and archers killed, 99% of them occurred before the firearm hunter even got to the woods. And this year, for the first time ever, Wisconsin had, of all the bucks harvested, 42% of them were already tagged before the gun season opened. That's never happened before.
No, it hasn't. I mean, and still, I have to still go back to, anecdotal information at Fishy's Bar, or just on message boards or social media. Right. People weren't seeing the deer. I know up in Birchwood, they get hammered by bears and wolves. 500-acre farm, he couldn't find deer on his trail camera, bucks or does.
No, and I agree with you. We have a lot of concerns, and it isn't just in the north where we have wolves and every predator known to mankind up there. Even in the southern half of the state, the predation is much higher than was ever anticipated. And a deer herd can only produce so much harvestable surplus. Okay? And that's what hunters count on, to be able to continue to have some satisfaction during their hunting season.
Yeah, the recruitment rates have to be there. Sustainable recruitment rates have to sustain the herd. Then you have to have a sustainable hunting herd. Two different things, in my opinion.
And I agree with you wholeheartedly. So, over time, and I'll just use it as an example, in 2000, that was the highest buck kill that was ever recorded in Wisconsin. For firearm hunters at that time, it was 171,753. So in 20 years, we went from 171,000 to 80,000 bucks that were harvested this year during gun season.
Almost half. Not quite, but
less than, a little more, yeah.
Substantial decrease in 20 years.
Right. And that's what the hunters and sportsmen feel. And so then when you throw in a new weapon type that has a whack at those bucks prior to the firearm season, now you start to get groups pitted against one another. And the primary reason is because there aren't the bucks on the landscape that people would like to see. And ultimately, it is the public that makes the choice on, how many deer does Wisconsin want to live with? And I ask this question all the time of the different CDAC groups and stuff that are out there. Well, what tells you you have too many deer on the landscape? I mean, there's got to be something that tells you that, because they all believe that, and they can't come up with a good answer for it. Well, we saw a herd of 40 deer on this field this winter. Well, that doesn't tell you anything that there's too many deer. There's 40 deer on that field and there may not be another deer within 10 miles because that's
Yeah,
a deer too.
how does the quantitative process that Wisconsin DNR biologists say, okay, we got X number deer in per square mile in Sawyer County? How do they do that?
Well, they use what's called the SAK formula. Now, actually, that's what they're supposed to use by law. However, they've been tweaking a new system the last few years to hopefully get at a little more accurate number, but it was obvious this year that their prediction was a mile off. They predicted prior to the season that we had somewhere between 1.7 and 2 million deer on the landscape, which would put us at all-time record highs. That would put us at the same population as we had in 2000. But in 2000, we killed 171,000 bucks with firearms and 40,000 with archery. There was no crossbow at that time. So we killed 210,000 bucks. We're not even close to that anymore.
Well,
so,
17 and 18 is 30, 35 plus, 30 and 20, that's 50, what is it? 30,000, 25,000, 55,000 plus 80. That's only 135,000 all in.
Right.
And we don't know how many man hours, we don't know how many hunter hours have been put into it. Because both you and I know some people go on a 9-day season, they go up to the cabin and they play cards and drink beer and they never go hunting. And some of the crew might for a day or two, but
right.
Opening weekend, if you don't have a deer Saturday, Sunday, or Monday, it's tough right now in Wisconsin to shoot a buck.
And
it
has been
tough.
Since the late 60s when I started deer hunting.
Really tough.
Yeah.
For a lot of reasons.
Right.
A lot of reasons.
Well, the biggest reason is deer aren't stupid.
Funny thing.
They have 700,000 guys tromping around in their bedroom, and they go, "Hey, we better lay low here." So, and that's gone on forever too. One of the things that kind of amazes me is this notion that deer have become nocturnal. Well, deer have always been nocturnal. It's just when we have cameras on the landscape now, oh, gee, I never saw that buck before. I never saw that deer before. Oh, they all went nocturnal. Well, they've always been nocturnal. I remember as a youngster, we used to long for an hour after dark to get out there with no weapons in the car and shine deer, because that's when you can make an assessment of what you had for deer on your property, because they were nocturnal then. So deer are nocturnal. They always have been. Frankly, if you really wanted to wipe deer off the face of the earth, we should implement a night season. But I think what people
Hopefully
have
we
lost...
don't get there. Hopefully.
Yeah, no. Trust me, I'm not advocating for that. See, I look at hunting seasons and bag limits as they were intended. Way back when the North American model first came implemented in this country, seasons and bag limits were put on to protect animals, not to kill animals. Prior to the seasons and bag limits, you could kill any animal anytime, 365 days a year.
Yep.
So the seasons, and I don't care whether you're talking fish, you're talking deer, or whatever, their seasons are in place to protect the resource.
And haven't they done a good job doing that? Look how many deer, turkeys. I mean, you can go right down the list. Number of elk. I mean, we got whitetails all the way to the Pacific Coast, probably. I know they have them in Oregon, but look, where the white-tailed deer has gone, and and we have more critters now across the board. And hey, people like Ducks Unlimited sure stepped up and did it. And there's many conservation groups, Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation. All you guys and gals, take a bow because you helped us do that. But now the thing is that we've got some out of balance, especially in my opinion, with the wolves. Colorado is fighting that right now, of whether they're going to be reintroduced, and how do you reintroduce something that's already here? I don't know, but that's a talk for a different day. Yeah. You've already been through that in Wisconsin. But having said that, the conservation model, the North American model, has worked in spades, and that's because of a gazillion people trying to do it. Now we're in a completely different time where it seems to me that we're getting, within the hunting community, we're getting more infighting, if you will, or, hey, I don't want people using that tool. I don't want people using this weapon. And to me, let's manage the resource as best we can and give as many people the opportunity to hunt with whatever weapon of choice they have. That's basically that's my platform.
Well, and I would agree with you wholeheartedly to give everybody fair opportunity. But you mentioned a really important point. We have also introduced predators, artificially propped up predator populations, and I don't mean just land predators, even the avian predators. And those all have an impact on game populations.
We didn't mention poaching.
No.
Which is a huge problem.
Well, I'm not sure it's that huge. I really don't think so. And
maybe I should temper huge.
Yeah, it's a problem, and I know it goes on out there. But what we need to do then is reassess what size does our herd need to be to sustain both mortalities from predation and mortalities from hunting. And I don't think in any agency across the country has that been given any consideration. Because obviously, if you're going to have more predators on the landscape, that means your base population has to be higher to sustain that population and still provide a huntable, harvestable surplus. So, and I'd love to see agencies start to acknowledge, we do have a lot more predators on the landscape. Maybe we should bump up our goals on our herds to accommodate that. Because right now, in Wisconsin, it's obvious the one getting the short end of the stick has been our firearm hunters.
This is Bruce Hutchin with a special message about my relationship with Burner.com. Burner HD is a non-lethal pistol that's available now on the web at Burner.com. If you go to the web and use my promo code LTD2020, you're going to get a 10% discount on all Burner product. So again, Let's Talk Deer has a discount, promo code LTD2020 for all Burner product. Go check them out. They're great.
You made that statement based on the increase in success for the archery hunters and the crossbow hunters?
Correct. Now, if you really look at data, and I believe the department had a chart in that crossbow survey showing how more and more deer over time have been harvested earlier, prior to the gun season. Now, part of that was the growth in archers from virtually several thousand to 250,000. So obviously you're going to have a growth in harvest there. But one thing that the archery community has always paid attention to is, are they harvesting more than their proportional amount that they would be entitled to based on their license sales? And for years and years, decades, that portion that archers were harvesting was below the percentage of licenses that they were purchasing. So gun hunters always held a slight advantage in harvest, and that's why we didn't have a whole lot of infighting between archers and firearm hunters. But that's a different story now that we've introduced a third weapon into the mix, that even with the DNR's numbers in that chart that I gave you, show that they have a distinctive advantage in success both over archers and over firearms.
Well, okay, 2019, 17.3% license sales, 13.6 for crossbows. Success rate for archery, based on your numbers, 18.1 and 22.2. Okay, that's a delta of 4%. And 25, so 4,000 more bucks were killed. But what I'm seeing here is the licenses 127 to 100. So now we got 227,000. We have half the number of people archery hunting.
And crossbows did not make up the difference.
Yeah, but the total archery, because there isn't a special, correct me if I'm wrong, there's not a special crossbow season in Wisconsin yet.
Yes, there is. Statutorily, there is.
Okay.
The crossbow season is defined in statute, that there will be a crossbow season. The length of that season can be adjusted just like the length of the...
Okay. So right now it's open. It opens with the archery season and runs to the end of archery season. Is that a correct statement?
That's correct.
Okay. So I wasn't in violation when I was hunting in October with my crossbow.
No, you weren't.
Okay, good.
And
I don't want to get a ticket, Chad. I don't want to get ticket.
You wouldn't have been in violation anyways because you're over 65.
Right.
Oh.
And I'm disabled. I'm a mess.
So
you can laugh. It's okay. Okay. So now we're looking at, okay, we got archery and crossbow. We got 40% and 60% guns. So there has been a huge shift. I mean, going back to 2014, in the last 5 years, crossbows have helped. I'm going to sneeze. Reduce the number of bucks by some 29,000 bucks. Now, my question would be, would some of the compound people say, man, I'm gonna hunt with a crossbow because it's I can use a rifle scope or blah 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 blah. It's just easier. I don't have to practice as much. I mean, you run a pro shop, so you know all the reasons, and you have 3D shoots. I mean, you have people that shoot their bow because they love shooting a bow year round. Other people, it's almost, don't get mad at me, people, but it's almost that some people say, oh, I better start flinging some arrows because deer season opens up and it's August. They haven't been shooting all year round. Just like rifle hunters, some rifle hunters, a week before season says, oh, I got to get my gear out, got to get my rifle out. Yeah, I'm going to shoot one down, put one down the tube, and I'm good. I'm on paper. I'm good. That's it. They exist.
You explained but it was kind of shocking to me to see that archery license sales are half of what they were prior to 2013.
Why do you think that is?
You just explained it. Because, gee, I don't have to practice as much. Gee, I can't see my sight anymore because my arms aren't long enough to keep it away where I can focus on them anymore. There's all kinds of reasons why people don't have time to practice like they used to.
I think they don't.
Exactly.
I'll say BS on that. Because you've got a pro shop, you see people in there shooting all the time because they love. It's just like darts in the bar. I mean, it's the same thing. When I was shooting all the time, I was shooting 3 or 4 times a week. I was in leagues, blah 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 blah. It was just what we did.
Right, and I agree. If there's a reason to make an excuse, people will make an excuse. But bottom line is, we lost half of our archery license sales since Crossbow, and what we've lost.
Yeah, basically since 2010. 2010 Crossbows came in 2014, based on your data.
Right. Well, that's DNR data.
Yeah.
So,
okay. The data
right.
from your natural resource board. So.
Right. Okay. So now, if I look at the loss there, but also the loss on the firearm side, and if you look, 2010 we had 574,000 gun license sales, 2013 588, and then it started going down.
Yeah, 510 based on your figures this year.
Correct. So we're looking at, we're hemorrhaging hunters on two ends, and the crossbow license sales are not making up the difference.
But isn't that in if you go across the country, we are losing hunters. Retention, the 3 R's, retention, reactivation and retention, reactivation, and recruitment. Thank you.
Right. So I agree, and I was firmly behind. Well, maybe crossbows will reactivate and retain some hunters, and I know it has done that. As far as recruitment, I don't believe it's been a very big tool in recruitment, and the data specifically supports that it hasn't recruited enough to make up the losses that have occurred. But I really want you to go back and look at the data from 2010 to 2013.
Okay.
On two fronts, both in archery license sales and in gun license sales, we were increasing here in Wisconsin. And we were actually bucking the national average with recruitment and retention. So what changed? We can look at the demographics excuse that everybody tends to lean on now. Me being a business person, I took that serious 25 years ago when they said, oh, we're going to have a huge demographic shift and we're going to lose hunters. Well, as a business person, you take that to go, we better do a better job of recruitment to make up that loss. And I know in my business, we did. We engaged ladies to get involved in shooting. We engaged youngsters. We have every group under the sun in our range shooting bows, and we're getting bows stuck into people's hands that was through birthday parties and things like that never would have ever even pulled a bow before. So that's how you recruit hunters, and that's how you make up the difference for the ones that are fading out. But we didn't do a good job nationally of recognizing the urgency. So, and I have a little bit of a belief that archery is the number one best way to recruit hunters.
I agree.
Here's my logic. I was actually hunting with Fred Bear, and we were sitting around having cocktails after a hunt and chit-chatting about different things. And at the time, he was trying to get the archery industry to grow. And they came out with a Become a Two-Season Hunter campaign. And, if you really enjoy gun hunting for deer, you should take up archery, and now you can hunt longer and become a better hunter and all that. That's the approach that Bear Archery took in an ad campaign. And I said, well, Fred's belief was everybody starts hunting as a gun hunter. And I said, and here I'm a 28-year-old kid arguing with 80-year-old Fred Bear, and I said, Fred, I think you're wrong with that. And he looked at me, and I said, Fred, how old were you when you tied your first string on a stick and started winging arrows at chipmunks in your backyard? And he said, oh, I don't know, 5 or 6. I said, and did your mom have a problem with it? And he goes, oh, no. I said, well, then it was archery that introduced you to hunting. And I believe that to this day, there's a certain romance about archery that the soccer moms are tolerable with their kids shooting a bow. If it was a firearm range that we had here, I guarantee we wouldn't get the participation with kids and birthday parties and all the kind of stuff that we do here. So moms are the gatekeeper to whether you're going to take up a shooting sport, and they're okay with archery.
Well said. Let's go back. Let's go back to our spreadsheet, and so let's talk about now. We got about 10 minutes left. Success rates. Your 2019 below the line, I'll just say, archery success was 19, crossbow success was 29, and then firearm success was 15. Okay, now is that on the total number of deer that were killed, which we agreed more or less was 25, 30, 55, 80, 135,000 deer? So what is that? How did you come up with that number? I guess I'm trying to.
All right.
I'm trying to figure that out. In the pink, the stuff in the pink.
So typically, success rates are the number of bucks divided by the number of licenses. That's all it is.
Okay.
And I wish I would have brought a calculator with me, but I don't have one here.
But how's that different than the buck harvest data in the green? That's where I'm confused.
Okay.
That's where I'm confused.
So
that's what's confusing me.
Okay. So in the green, it's the percent of the total kill. So that buck harvest is a percent of the total kill. So there's two ways you can look at things. You can look at things from success rate, but in the Crossbow report, the department started looking at percent of harvest. And I went, well, that's not a bad way to show things to people either. But everybody's used to success rates. And they're a simple calculation. You just divide the harvest by the license holders. And that'll give you your success rate. So to me, that's the number the public wants. Because without the license data, you really don't know what has the impact been of to archery and to crossbows. But when you see the license data along with the harvest, then you begin to put things into proper perspective. So those are just two different ways to look at percent of harvest overall. Now, granted, as your percent of license sales go up, you should have a higher percent of the harvest. But both in success rate and percent of harvest, we can see there's a distinct advantage to hunting with a crossbow.
Yeah, what you just said. Okay, in 2019, 510,370 licenses were sold, and then the firearm success was only 15%.
Okay, so if you take 80,149
divided by 510,
right,
that's 15%.
Yeah, that's your
Okay.
success rate.
Okay. So, bottom line, does the DNR really care how the deer get killed, or do they want to meet harvest management goals, but at the same time placate, maybe that's not the right word, but meet the needs of the people in the state and out of state? Because I know a lot of out of state people hunt Buffalo County every year, and I used to do it for a number of years. I went to Buffalo County I wanted to hunt or kill a 180 buck. Never did. I saw one, but I never got a shot.
Yeah.
And
they're not easy.
Go ahead.
They're not easy. You can have a lifetime and probably never shoot one.
Well, I've seen them in Saskatchewan and you know, I did see one in Buffalo County, and he was right where I thought he would be, but I didn't close the deal. Anyway, enough of me. So basically what we're saying is based on this information, and I guess go back to the question to you, Kaz, is does Wisconsin want to manage the deer herd for the opportunity for all people? Do they want to be biased to hunters, biased to archers, biased to crossbow people? And I know that being disabled, I'll get a crossbow license from Wisconsin. The doctor will sign the form and I'll get a crossbow license because you want me to hunt. I understand that. And the rest of the states in the country feel the same way. I've got a lifetime in Colorado, have a lifetime in Arizona for crossbow hunting.
Right.
And
from my perspective, and I believe the board's perspective, we want them all hunting. We want everybody to have a reason to be an archer, a reason to be a crossbow hunter, a reason to be a firearm hunter, a reason to be a muzzleloader.
Yeah, we didn't even talk about muzzleload hunting.
Right. So to us, we get alarmed when we see the participation rate in firearm and archery drop so abruptly. And then we go, well, what's going on? Well, we tried to get to the bottom of that with that crossbow survey, but it's all over the board. You know, people quit gun hunting because they weren't seeing deer. Well, is that because we're killing them before the gun deer season? Other people were quitting because the crossbows were out there and they got the first crack at all the big bucks and were killing the big bucks.
Well, so do archeries. So, I don't.
They do, but
the compound guy, the biggest deer on our farm was killed by a kid, 18 years old, Garrett, 180 buck. He killed it with his compound the first season.
Right. And we all know that happens. But once again, that's where success rates come into play. Proportionately, they were never killing their proportion of those big bucks, proportion of the bucks on the landscape. because it was just more difficult to do. Yeah. One of the reasons why people love bow hunting and love being out there at that time of the year is because you see those big bucks running around. But just because they're running around doesn't mean you can close the deal. If you know what I mean.
I can raise my hand.
Yeah. So
my hand is raised.
That's what kept us going back, though, is because, geez, someday I'm going to connect on one of those.
Right place, right time.
Right. So that's how we're looking at the whole situation. Now, we are really limited. There's been discussion on, well, should we limit the equipment? Crossbows without scopes, speed limits on crossbows. Well, years ago, our DNR board, before I was on it, looked at equipment and advances in equipment, both in fishing and hunting, and is it worthwhile to try to regulate that? And the conclusion was you'd never be able to keep up with it. Frankly,
just look like, in your shop, what has changed with a compound bow, and all the gizmos. I mean, it's just, laser sights on compound boats.
Right.
I mean,
now we can't use those in Wisconsin.
Other states you can, though. I'm just saying.
I agree.
When you look at technology, it's unbelievable. And, I know guys that shoot 100 yards, and I don't shoot my crossbow, even though it's 380 feet per second. 60 yards, that's my kill range, personally. And there's people with 10 points, and, you might sell 10 points. And what's the one? It's guaranteed to hit a 8-inch circle at 100 yards. Raven. Is it Raven?
Yep. We sell those
Raven
too. Yep.
And it's just like, oh my goodness.
They're amazing.
They are. And they're deadly. I mean, they're flat out, they're deadly as a rifle out to 100 yards. Period.
No, you can't argue that fact because there's
no question about that. So it comes back to my point. You have all this technology advancement with compounds. I know guys that he shot his bighorn ram at 100 yards with a compound bow on a mountainside. I also know guys that shot a caribou with his Raven at 100 yards. I know the same guys that reach out to 1,000 yards now, which I don't hold the candle to, but they're shooting 1,000 yards and they're putting elk down. Boom.
Yep.
You have to wait a while to watch the elk fall, but it's just like, it's incredible the technology that's available to people.
And I would agree. And archery has made a lot of technological advances. Crossbows are in their infancy of that. Rifles have. I started hunting deer I started with a smoothbore shotgun, and then I upgraded to a 30-30 Marlin lever action with iron sights.
336. I bet it was a 336.
Yeah, it was. So, and obviously that's come a long way too. So we have gotten better and more efficient with our equipment. So the board back then said you can't chase equipment advantages. What we can do, though, is regulate season. Now, we do it all the time on panfish and game fish. We make the bag limit smaller. As they get more efficient with their equipment, you have less of a bag limit, or you have a shorter season. We don't have fishing seasons set up during the spawn for a reason, because they're too vulnerable then. So all of those things come into play with deer and every other game species out there, turkey and everything else. So we don't allow shooting hens in the spring either, because that would be kind of silly. So So that's the only option you really have, is to take a close look at the season structure and say, how can we even this out? So for 3 consecutive years, I got harvest data by day for archers and crossbow hunters. And it's obvious where you need to, if you need to shorten the season, shorten the season. So our board question was asking primarily that we would lower the age to 60 years old from 65, where it previously was, and disabled would still continue to hunt the season. And then we took a couple of weeks off the front end and a couple of weeks off the back end, allowing crossbow hunters to be the best month of the year to hunt, which is the month of October. And you're looking for nice weather. You're still catching to be the best week of the rut, which is the last week of October. So it's still a great season compared to what they had prior to 2014, which was nothing. So,
right. And there's going to be people that say, I'm in a tree stand October 31st, 24 hours or 12 hours, however long the day is. And I've seen some gorgeous bucks. I haven't killed as many of the bucks that I wanted. But there's also the trend, depending on the moon and the vernal equinox. Hope I said that right. I mean, all these things come into play that when I'm hunting various states, I hunt from about the 23rd of October through the 10th of November.
Yep.
And then things change. You got lockdown after the 10th, and it gets interesting. Then, there's just like a natural break there, and you can still kill deer, but then the gun season starts. And
right.
That's my thing is, if Wisconsin went with, Halloween, you're shut down and you can't hunt with your crossbow till X, whatever. Or
right.
Are you going to allow crossbow hunting in conjunction with a rifle, so I can choose to use my crossbow or my rifle during the gun season?
You already can do that.
No, I know, but with the new.
No, again, those were just questions we were asking. But because of the lesser weapon bill we have in the state, you can hunt with crossbow year-round. Now, I worked hard to get that bill done too, and there were guys out there that for some reason or another were not allowed to purchase firearms. I don't go into detail and ask them why.
Yeah, they're felon. In Colorado, if you're a felon, you can't hunt you can't get a firearm license.
And same in Wisconsin. But you don't even have to be a felon. If there was a neighbor that called in a domestic dispute.
Or you're not paying your wife's alimony or something.
Yeah, there were numerous reasons.
Yeah, there's a bunch.
Yeah. So, to me, that opened up a big door to a lot of people that were kind of left out of being able to enjoy the firearm season. And when the lesser weapon bill went through, we saw an uptick in crossbow sales, and guys were excited as heck to get out there with their buddies and going back to their traditional deer camp. So I look at all of the whole big picture, including the firearm side. And firearm hunting, to me, was totally different than bow hunting. Bow hunting is kind of a solitary thing. You're out there. It's not the camaraderie kind of thing that a firearm hunt is.
Agreed.
Firearm hunt, you get your group together and you're going to the tavern for the fish fry on Friday night before it opens, and it's a different culture than it is with the archery season, where archers prefer to not see another person out there hunting while they're in the woods.
No,
So
you're entirely right, and that's the beauty of Wisconsin. I still have memories of back in the '60s when I started. Huge deer drives up and down the Baraboo River, and then we'd all come back and bring the deer. We'd hang the deer, skin the deer, and then we'd sit around this big plank table in the barn. I mean, there must have been 20 or 30 people there, and the wives had cooked for us in some ways for hunting, and we'd sit there and drink beer and play euchre, and it was just like it was a gathering.
yeah,
It was
an experience.
yeah, it was just unbelievable. And that was my introduction to Wisconsin hunting, and
and I don't want to see those traditions go away because
I don't think anybody does.
Yeah, I don't believe so, but during that Crossbow report, when the department presented it to the board, I asked that very question of the agency people, and their response was, it's not our job to maintain traditions. And that kind of scares me that comes from agency people. Because I said, well, from where I sit on the board, and we set policy, I think it's huge that we maintain those traditions. And I think that's what the public wants of the board. I think that's what the legislatures want of the board, for us to help maintain those traditions. And I know those little corner taverns that are selling the fish fries and the gas stations up north, they want those traditions to maintain. That's huge to them. So, yeah, it's a much bigger picture, but when you're trying to be fair, you're always going to rankle somebody.
Yeah. Say, Kaz, if somebody has some questions for you, pro, against, or comments, how do you want them to get in touch with you?
They're more than welcome to get in touch with me. My email for the Natural Resources Board is gregkaz.nrb@gmail.com. And you can go right to the DNR website under DNR Board, and I believe the email is in there.
And give a shout out for your pro shop.
Well, the name of my pro shop is Buck Rub Outfitters. We're heading into our 43rd year in business, and we sell both crossbows and archery equipment, and from anything from soup to nuts, and repairs and tuning and that kind of stuff is obviously our specialty as a pro shop. Teaching, proper shooting, and all that kind of stuff.
And what community are you in?
We're located in Pewaukee, Wisconsin.
How far off the interstate or whatever that road from Madison to Milwaukee is?
We are right off of Interstate 94. Our property butts about a half a mile of interstate frontage. We're 45 minutes from Madison and 20 minutes from Milwaukee.
So, folks, go support Kaz. If you don't know anything about archery, like to get involved, come out. Test some bows out. Go to one of his open, archery nights or, leagues. Archery shooting is really fun, and it teaches you a lot more than just slinging arrows, muscle memory, and there's so many positive things that I've got in my life for being an archer that people like Kaz are passing us on. So, job well done.
Well, thank you, and appreciate it. Invite it back anytime you want. CWD is another one of my specialty areas that I'm well versed in. So if you ever have that subject come up, I'm happy to talk to you on that also.
Well, that's a topic for another time, that's for sure. With
All
that,
right.
I'll say thank you so much, Kaz. This is Bruce Hutchin, your host from Let's Talk Deer.